The time is at hand.
The elusive dog-like creature attacks livestock, bleeding them dry of blood.
8 to 10 feet tall, shadowy aliens.
But I am telling you right now,
we need a great reset.
And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Babylon the Great is fallen, is fallen.
Welcome to In Dark Places. I'm your Huckleberry, Jumbo Fugit, and I saw a big black triangle UFO, also known as a TR-3B Black Manta. These aircraft are reportedly owned by the U.S. Air Force, but officially they don't exist. So until they do exist, I guess they're UFOs. I was at work on March 21st, 2024, and during my lunch I was kind of looking through my bills, trying to figure out how in the world I want to pay all those. And I realized I was behind on my water bill, as usual. The water department here is located in a little place called Naugatuck, West Virginia, and they have a little drop box where you can insert your bill, your payment, your money. And I use this drop box pretty often. It's handy. So I wrote a check, and I was sitting there at lunchtime at work, and then after I got off work, I was going to go and put that check in the drop box at the water department. In order to get to Naugatuck, you have to go through a little dead community of Nolan, West Virginia. It used to be booming. It's dead now. And this is where Kyle Lovern's from. Shout out, Kyle. And also our loyal listener, Steve. Nolan is where Kyle saw his first UFO back in 1973. My dad was from there, and that's where my aunt and uncle lived. And I spent lots of time in Nolan. I've seen some pretty decent UFOs there myself. And here is my dramatic recreation of the sighting. Please note, the UFO was not created with Microsoft Paint in real life. It was an actual craft. Just have to put that little disclaimer in there. Some people don't know. They'll be trying to argue about it being CGI and stuff in the comments. I know how you people are. So there I was, driving through Nolan, and there's this one particular curve as you're leaving Nolan. As I went around the curve, I immediately saw some lights right above the 4-lane, just hanging there, and they were low. I'm not the best in the world at judging height and distance and stuff, but I want to say this thing was like 1,500 feet above the road. So I immediately just let off the gas and started slowing down and pulled off the road. I could see 2 white lights and about 6 or 8 blue cylindrical lights. I was facing what would have been the left side of the craft, and those blue lights were on the opposite side, on the right. I was thinking these lights must belong to a helicopter, and I kept looking, and I rolled my window down. I didn't hear any noise. And then the lights started moving, and as they did, the blue lights went off, and then I could see 3 white lights on corners of a triangular craft as it went over top of me, and 1 big white light in the middle. And it was then that I realized it wasn't a helicopter. And it just looked off to me. It seemed that the blue lights should have been the back, but when those blue lights were on the right side, the craft started moving kind of toward the left. So I think something with the propulsion system indicates that little blue light when it's about to turn in a certain direction. Maybe. There was a half moon out, also known as a first quarter moon. It was behind me, and even though it was just half full, the sky was really lit up. So it started slowly flying away off to the southwest over toward Kentucky. And I could hear this low hum coming from the craft. My best description of the noise would be kind of like one of those big industrial fans. You know, those things kind of sounded like that. And I could see a lot of detail of this thing. It was clearly one solid craft. And I was pulled off on the shoulder of a 4-lane, and if this thing would have just dropped straight down instead of flying away, it would have taken up all 4 lanes of the 4-lane. It was pretty big. And as it started flying away, I realized, my phone! I had my phone in my pocket. And I opened up the camera app thing and started trying to take a picture of the triangle like mad. It's impossible. I don't know what was going on with it. I pushed that button probably 50 times. Kept trying to get the picture. And it would not take a picture. I don't know why. I guess maybe the light from outside was kind of messing with it and was trying to adjust or focus or something. I don't know. But my little iPhone would not take a picture. And then finally, like right at the last minute, the triangle was about to go behind a mountain. And I managed to snap one picture. Just one. And for some weird reason, there was a bunch of streaks in the picture. I don't know why. It looks like there was a bunch of bugs flying at me or something. And I don't know. It don't make sense. Because my hand was perfectly still sitting on the window of my car. It wasn't raining out or anything. And there was a bunch of streaks in my picture. Looking back, I wish I would have just selected over to video on my phone and recorded a video of this thing so I could have got that sound and maybe a better image of it. Didn't even think about using video. But I mentioned the moon was out and Jupiter was over on the western horizon. And I watched in silence as my triangle went behind the mountain. So I was super excited. I was sitting there in the car, kind of wondering why no one else saw this thing. It was only 9:30, but there wasn't a lot of traffic out that night. I pulled back out onto the road, and I continued with my drive to Naugatuck. And about a mile down the road, I saw a big wildfire on the mountain near this little coal mine community known as Miller's Creek. And it dawned on me then that this UFO, TR-3B, was checking out that fire. It was in the perfect position to be looking over that way. So there you have it. There's my big black triangle.
This is your little friend, Mr. Haunted, and I've been absent for a while, writing my book for 5-6 hours a day. I'm exhausted, but I'm almost done with it, and I want to send some stories in to you guys. So the first thing I thought of was look to Florida for some news. And here you go. Florida man shot his roommate 10 times over argument over cats, police say. A Florida man fired a barrage of gunfire towards his roommate during an argument over cats. According to an affidavit obtained by Fox 35 from the Lee County Sheriff's Office, 59-year-old Glenn White shot his female roommate 10 times. 7 of the shots were in her lower extremities, twice in her ribs, and once on her finger. Police said that they responded to the South Florida home on March 8th after reports of gunfire. According to the affidavit, when they arrived, they found that the victim had been shot. Authorities arrested White, and the victim was transported to Gulf Coast Medical Center. Police said that when the victim was awake and coherent, she told authorities that the shooting stemmed from an argument the two were having in the days leading up to the incident. The woman noted that White had recently been evicted from his home and she had allowed him to stay at her house. She said that he moved in with 3 cats, but it quickly doubled to 6 cats. The victim allegedly told White that she was going to place them outside in a screened-in area. The affidavit said that moments later, White began shooting at the victim. "I'm going to kill you, you B-word. I'm going to kill you." Police said that the victim begged White to stop, and he eventually allowed her to call 911. What a champ. After authorities were called, they found 4 40-millimeter casings in a bedroom, plus a black and silver Smith & Wesson firearm on top of the dresser. Deputies also observed a blood trail from the bedroom to the dining room where the woman's cell phone was. According to Lee's County Sheriff's Office online booking records, White was charged with 1 count of aggravated battery with a deadly weapon. Seems like he's getting off pretty light. White remains in custody at the Lee County Jail on $25,000 bond. He's scheduled to appear in court on April 8th. So where are those little cats now? Now back to Junebug with more In Dark Places.
Jimmy Haunted. There he is. Thank you, sir. I always forget to do this. We have new listener shout-outs. Richard, Chris, Rob, Clayton, Melanie, Jamie, Leo, Joanne, Neil, Steve, over on YouTube, Amber, Debbie, Court, Old World, Cryptids, Mangy Wolf, Peter, Kristen, and shout out to the people that share the show every week. Dark Matters and Mysteries of Western Pennsylvania and beyond. Steve, UFO Fred, Amber. Thanks, guys. Spreading the good word. Shout out to all of our regulars. James, Kyle, Steve, Roger, Tim, Ryan, Linda, Michelle, Dylan, Matt, Terry. We love our synchronicities on the show. A few nights ago I was watching a time travel video and my Uncle Terry sent me a time travel video. And a couple of weeks ago on episode 159 I was talking about how UFOs tend to make themselves visible near roads. And I saw this triangle hovering over top the road. Most of Jimmy's UFO sightings have been near a road. Tracy had his UFO sighting while he was on the road. Pretty crazy. Back when I was a field investigator with MUFON, it was really hard to get to talk to witnesses. They would send me emails of their stories, but when I would call them, they would never answer the phone. The first person that would actually talk to me was a gentleman named Daniel Price. He lived up in Nitro, West Virginia, and he had a story of a TR3B triangle that appeared to be tethered to something in a parking lot near his house. He sent me a picture of it and it just seemed really bizarre because these things are aircraft. They're made of metal and stuff, but this was tied like a balloon, so I'm guessing it was some sort of balloon. But it looked like a legit TR3B triangle. And after I talked to Daniel, I stayed in touch with him for years. He was really fascinated with these TR3Bs, and he would get out looking for them every night. The next day he would email me and say, "I saw 2 of them last night," stuff like that. The last time he wrote to me was February 7th, 2021, and I found out later that he died on June 21st, 2021. But I can hear Dan right now being all excited for me for getting to see this triangle up close like this. Pretty cool. This week's topic was sent in to us from Paul Chadwick. And it's a good thing too, because my plan was to just do an entire episode about TR3Bs and people's sightings of them. And that could have got kind of old. And then I spent a couple hours just staring at my computer trying to figure out, well, what am I going to talk about? And then Paul sent in the topic. So Thank you, Paul. And if you have a topic idea for us, you can send it in to us at indarkplacespod@hotmail.com. So this week's topic is Easter horror stories. For Christians, Resurrection Sunday celebrates the birth, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. For pagans, Easter celebrates fertility and the goddess of spring. No matter what side of the fence you sit on, there's some scary stories that happen on Easter. Like this one. When I was younger, I used to live by the woods and could see a cemetery from my back porch. One Easter, I remember waking up and seeing the Easter Bunny in one of those terrifying costumes. And what really gets me is I remember smelling the wet hay. When I woke up, I didn't tell anyone, but there was an extra Easter egg in my house that my parents didn't hide. Years later, when I was in high school, I asked my parents if they ever dressed up like the Easter Bunny and came into our room, and they said they would never go to so much trouble. Then my younger sister, who I shared a bunk bed with when this happened, said she remembers when the Easter Bunny came into our room and made a remark about the hay smell. I was terrified that we both remembered seeing a person dressed up as a bunny in our room. To make it even stranger, I told the friends I sat with at lunch what happened. One of the girls was my neighbor across the street. She told me one Easter a long time ago, she looked out her window during the night and saw the Easter Bunny standing in her driveway. I had chills. To this day, I am terrified of people in rabbit costumes. My kids were asking me about paranormal experiences I've had throughout my life, and usually I have known people who have experienced similar things. But I've never heard of anyone else seeing a ghost Easter Bunny. I was about 5 or 6 and sitting in my bedroom. It wasn't around Easter or anything, but I remember getting a creepy feeling like I was being watched. And then, at the same time that the feeling started, the radio turned on, and I swear it played "Somebody's Watching Me." I froze in place, too afraid to move at that point. I turned my head to the doorway of my bedroom, and I swear I saw what looked like somebody in an old Easter Bunny costume. He stood there watching me for about a minute before he turned around and left. That was the first and last time I've ever seen it, but every time I hear that song, I get flashbacks of that event. My story was the night before Easter. I was asleep in between my grandparents. I was about 5 years old, and I woke up in the middle of the night to see a large brown rabbit, shape of a person in a costume, standing in the doorway watching me. I can't remember if he had a basket or not, but I think he did. Of course, no one believed me. I met a girl in college who shared a very similar story. One Easter when I was about 3 and my brother was 4, we snuck out of our rooms to get into our Easter baskets early and eat candy. When we were crossing the dark living room, I glanced at a slightly open curtain facing east and could see in the dawn light the silhouette of a 6-foot bunny facing the windows and peeking in. I instantly hit the floor and motioned to my brother. He saw it too, and we both billy crawled out of the room. It was yellow with pink ear centers, like a costume someone would wear. A year later, again, I wanted candy early. Went and got some, but this time it was darker and the curtains were fully closed. Once back in my bedroom, I got brave and decided I'd peek out my window, which also faced east, and look toward the living room windows outside and see if I could see anything. As soon as I grabbed my curtain to move it away from the window, I felt 5 strong smacks on my hand from the other side. I swear I jumped out of my body as I screamed bloody murder. My father was in the room in an instant. I told him what happened, and he proceeded to open the window, poke his head outside, and reassure me there wasn't anything there. To this day, I know what I felt, and my brother saw me. I'm a 40-year-old man, and this was around 1982 or 1983, and it's still just as real to me today. I saw a large Easter bunny in my grandparents' apartment when I was about 6. They had a railroad flat, so all the rooms were connected. I was in bed in the last bedroom, and it walked through the bedroom into the living room. I was a kid. It was Easter, and my aunt and uncle were in the garden hiding eggs. And as a very curious kid, I checked by the window to know what they were doing. And then I saw a very tall and thin bunny. It seemed that it was talking to them, my aunt and uncle. So I thought it was normal. So I asked them what it was. They had no idea. I asked my aunt again this year, since I'm much older now, and she just laughed at me and said it never happened. And if she had hired a comedian, we would have met. But I know I saw it through the window, and I always thought that was weird. What's this? I'm being told we have more news.
Oh, guess what? I have some more. Florida news. Outraged ex-girlfriend breaks into Florida home, dumps pickled pork inside before slinging soda bottle. In Lehigh Acres, Florida, bottles of Sprite and pickled pork landed a Florida woman in jail after deputies say she threw one of her items at the ex-boyfriend and doused his couch with the other. According to the Lee County Sheriff's Office, Akiva Reddick used a hidden spare key to get inside her ex-boyfriend's home, that little rascal. Once she gained access, deputies say she threw and broke items all around the house. According to Lee County Sheriff's Office, she even took a bottle of pickled pork and dumped it all over the victim's couch. When a deputy arrived at the Lehigh Acres home for reports of a burglary, he said he saw the victim outside with Reddick chasing after him. Body cam footage shows Reddick, who deputies say was still heated from an argument inside the home, throwing a 2-liter bottle of Sprite at the victim. The deputy proceeds to ask Reddick to go over to a tree away from the victim so he could talk with the victim. The suspect says she will listen to the deputy, but points her finger at the ex-boyfriend and says, "You, I'm not going to listen to." Reddick was arrested for battery, burglary, and criminal mischief of pickled pork. And that does it for some Florida breaking news. I think I want to move to Florida.
I was probably about 5 or 6, and I woke up to a white bunny type thing delivering a basket to my bedside table. It was the size of a person in a costume. My parents swear up and down that it wasn't them. I'm now 35, and they would have told me by now if it would have been them. I saw the Easter bunny move around a chair from the open door of my room, aged at about 5 or 6. This account has come up many times around this age, and as I look into such things, it sets me at ease to see that others have seen it. I used to like to look out the window when I was a kid before bed and try to see stuff that maybe only came out at night. We were the second house from the end. not like a dead end, but end into the main road. And there was a street light at the first house, so it wasn't pitch black, but there were shadows. Anyway, I remember seeing a near man-sized rabbit with crooked ears and grossly long legs moving around outside up the street. There was the main road, and up a bit was another street that turned off across from mine, so I could see a good distance. It moved in a way that made me uncomfortable, so I ducked back into bed. We lived in a 2-story house, and my room faced the stairway. I don't know how much time had passed. You never know as a kid. An hour, 5 minutes, feeling like a century. But I heard the stairs creak and covered my head. I can't remember if my parents were also upstairs asleep, but I remember the nightlight was on at the base of the stairs, and that meant everyone was in bed. Anyway, I peek out at these sounds and I see this crooked-eared shadow coming up, and I nearly lost my mind. I stayed quiet forever and fell asleep till morning. I woke up to my basket of treats and wanted to sling them right back out the window that I saw that thing out of. A couple years later, I saw an episode of Ripley's Believe It or Not, and they were talking about jackrabbits and how they had big legs and long teeth. There was a drawn depiction of one, and it hit the back of my throat and burned to my stomach because it reminded me of that thing that I saw. I was not a fan of Easter after that, nor was I too keen on looking out the window at night. I don't know if it was the Easter Bunny, but I saw a bunny on Easter that I hope I never see again. I saw the Easter Bunny when I was a kid. I was around 6 or 7. It was a huge and scary bunny. I remember that I heard noise in the kitchen. It was morning, so I woke up and took a look, and there it was, standing in the kitchen looking for something. As it turned around, I saw its face. It was pure evil. I always thought that this was a dream, but I can still remember it to this day, 25 years later, crystal clear. For the last 20 or so years, I've been freaked out by this memory I have from childhood. I'm 37 now, and it still feels totally real, but the rational side of my mind has forced me to reconcile it as a strange, vivid dream. The memory is from when I was a young child, possibly 5 or 6. My parents divorced right around this age, and in this memory, they're still together. Here's the context. It was Easter, or very close to it. My family owns 40 acres of land in the Catskills, and I spent countless weekends up there through my life, and in this memory most of my family was up for the holiday. It was a tradition to hide the children's Easter baskets and have the kids find them instead of the eggs. So the dream begins with it being Easter morning. The log cabin currently on the property wasn't built at the time, but we had a 2-car garage with a wood stove and a small camper. It was chilly that morning, and still early spring in upstate New York. My brother and I split up to search for our Easter baskets in the woods. I remember walking around the woods surrounding the garage and wondering where my basket would be. Just how far into the woods would my parents have placed it? My grandfather always smoked a pipe, and as I ventured deeper down the trail, I smelled a pretty familiar scent. I remember thinking, how did Pop get down here already? I was getting closer to the scent, and it was getting stronger. And just then, I saw something I'll never be able to get out of my mind. A humanoid rabbit resting against a tree about 20 yards in front of me. It turned its head and looked right at me. All I felt was pure terror. I stared for a few seconds, and then turned around and ran for my life. I ran back to the garage and the safety of my parents. I remember crying hysterically and told my father what I had seen. I remember my family surrounding me and calming me down while telling me I had imagined it and everything was okay. the memory fades from there. I don't remember the aftermath. Still, 25 plus years later, I still have that image seared into my mind and cannot shake it. As I stated, the logical part of my mind has tried to convince myself that it was nothing more than a vivid dream or a nightmare. But it's always there, lurking, and no matter how much time passes, I cannot seem to 100% convince myself that it was nothing more than the imagination of a 5-year-old. I've never seen a ghost or a glitch, nothing paranormal or inexplicable to speak of, except the bunny. I was about 5, and I remember this entire scene as clearly as day. A tall, 6, maybe even 7 feet tall rabbit with a humanoid face. Not a rabbit face, basically like one of those Easter Bunny costumes, but real. You could tell its fur was real, and his face moved naturally, not like plastic, though it did remain more or less expressionless. I don't recall being seriously frightened, more confused as to how it got into our house. And it was in my living room, and confused that something I had previously thought was unreal apparently was real.
She walked into the bar. Everyone turned to look at her. What a pair of gams, I thought. Through the smoke, I could barely see her, but I knew she was tall and had long legs and long brown hair. She sat down. I asked her if I could buy her a drink. She just kind of growled at me. Then, I'm looking at her. It was a Bigfoot! That's all it was a Bigfoot! I just wanted to practice my new voice. That's old-fashioned Jimmy voice. Thank you.
Jimmy Petnito. I love that guy. When I was around 6 or 8, I lived in a tiny town in the coastal mountains. It was just my young parents, early 20s and early 30s, and myself, living in a double-wide trailer. Someone was kind enough to let us move onto their property, and it was beautiful. Picture redwood forest as your backyard. Gorgeous. There was horses on the property too, which is another story. Anyway, after putting out carrots and water for the Easter Bunny, I went to bed, which was the first room when you walk down the hallway from a large living room. I prayed and prayed so hard that I would meet the Easter Bunny. I had made that same prayer every Easter for years. The next thing I know, I'm asleep. I remember having a small rectangle room, and my bed was on the opposite side of the room, diagonal to the door. As I was in a deep sleep in dreamland, I was woken up by the sound of my door opening. I stayed still and pinched my arm to see if it was a nightmare. It worked, and I felt the pain. So hoping I was awake and thinking it was my parents, I pretended to be asleep. The footsteps I heard didn't sound like them, so I tried to slowly slink lower under my blankets while seeming asleep. My bed was a twin bed with a wooden frame with drawers at the bottom and a headboard that had 2 sliding doors for a cabinet storage. The steps stopped about a foot away from my head, and that's when I heard tap, tap, tap on my headboard. I slowly looked up, trying to act like I'm sleeping, but I was terrified. I can barely see a large glowing white fuzzy fingertip. Tap, tap, tap. The taps got louder and sounded impatient and angry. I shut my eyes and silently prayed for protection. I'm not sure how long it was, but it seemed like forever, until I heard my door shut. Slowly looking toward my door, I saw nothing. I was relieved, but still wanted comfort. Still afraid to leave my super protective blankets, I surrounded myself with as much stuffed animals as I could reach without leaving my bed. I'm sure that I was just so exhausted from it all that maybe it was my body, tired from a very active imagination, and I must have passed out. The next thing I know, I'm under my mountain of studies, being woke up for school by my mom. This happened a long time ago. I'm almost 20, and this happened when I was 5 or 6. At that age, I didn't know anything about ghosts, and I don't know if this was a ghost, but I can tell you I wasn't hallucinating. I'll give you a basic description of my house. My bedroom is the farthest room in the house. If you walk out of my room, there is a hallway that leads into the dining room. There are a few rooms on both sides. My mom's room is right next to mine, then a guest room, and then my bathroom. On Easter morning, right around 4 a.m., I woke up. It was normal for me because I would have to use the bathroom. I feel your pain. I didn't sleep with my door closed at the time, so it was opened. I never liked to use my bathroom because it was too far away from my room. I'm scared of the dark. But that night I wanted to use my bathroom. I walked to my door and I looked down the hallway into the dining room. And you know how little kids take pictures with the life-size Easter bunny? Yeah, there was one of those in my dining room. Like, this thing was huge, and being a little kid, it was scary. The lights weren't on, and I didn't want to turn them on. Being a little kid, things went through my mind like, what if I get killed? Or what if I won't get my basket? I decided not to go to my bathroom, and I went to my mom's. My mom was in her bed. Trust me, I checked. I stayed in her room for 5 minutes and went out to go back to my room, and it was gone. No one believes me when I tell them this story, and it makes me upset because it's very true. And that one has a lot of comments, so let's dip into the comments. My sister and I have had a similar experience, and we both saw the same thing to some detail. For over 20 years, we were so confused on what we saw, and we have now finally looked it up, and there are so many people that have had similar experiences. So glad we looked it up. There are reports of a being with a man's body and a rabbit head, often seen wearing a tuxedo. My oldest child saw it, and so did his friend, so you're not alone. I saw a shadow figure that looked like the Easter Bunny one evening when I was a little kid. It disappeared into the wall of our living room. There are trickster spirits in our world that like to assume various shapes to mess with us. My grandmother once told me she saw something that looked like Santa Claus sitting at our kitchen table one night. And she was a God-fearing woman and did not make things up like that. So what are all these guys seeing? Is it the elusive Virginia Bunny Man? Or is it some kind of smokescreen device used by aliens to make them think they're seeing a big giant rabbit? We are woefully out of time this week, or something. Thanks for listening. We'll see you again right here next week. God bless you.